Hello and welcome to the second of my How to Break Into the World of Games Journalism follow-up videos. The last one just went up likely right before this one, which was about sort of Twitch and YouTube and the whole question of breaking into the traditional games price when those two behemoths exist. This one's going to be a bit more granular. I promise that I do a video about the questions that you guys put in the comments. There's a bunch of questions. I got about a dozen of them here, which kind of represent the broad questions that were asked, and a couple of like super specific ones that I thought were pretty useful. But I'm up to doing this again. Honestly, part of me feels like I'm just like tapping myself in the back or like beating on this drum that nobody cares about with this series, but the amount of people who like commented makes me think that okay, actually this is worthwhile doing. So thank you so much for commenting. I try not to make this very masturbatory and give good advice. So if there is any more questions and if there is a hunger for another follow-up video asking more questions, maybe I'll do it in like a month's time or something. But yeah, hopefully this will be useful. And I'm trying to compact all this information into as much as possible, into like as short a time frame as possible. So I'm thinking like if there's half an hour video that answers all this stuff, then maybe it'll be useful to someone to sit down over lunch and kind of consume as much of it as possible. So I should probably start answering questions now instead of rambling. First question, Diary of Jane 22, which is probably just Diary of Jane 2 because it always copies the 2 over because it says whatever. Danny, how did you get in contact with someone? How do you get in contact with someone in the industry? So if you're talking about, I'm guessing you're talking about somebody who's could give you a job within an industry. This basically involves social engineering. This involves stalking people. This involves using your LinkedIn to figure out who managers are within organizations, following people on Twitter who work for big game sites, seeing who they're, everyone's public. Every person who works in a games media organization has some sort of Twitter presence or whatever, and you can get involved in those conversations by following them and then not badgering them, like I said very importantly in the first video. But you can get your work in front of those people really easily. There's this new thing on Twitter, right, where you can like embed a 30-second video. If that existed like 5 years ago, that would have been the easiest way to get your portfolio in front of someone. If you can like find, the video manager in IGN or GameSpot or your local video production office, just make a 30-second like portfolio, like a reel. Sorry, early morning. 30-second reel. Stick it in Twitter and send it to them. Be like, hey, this is some of my work. If you're ever looking for something, let me know. Done. Boom. Do that a couple of times if you want. Don't do them at the same time because they'll look at your feed, and if you've done it to 20 people, they'll fucking hate that. But yeah, that's kind of what it involves doing. If you're talking about people who aren't in the press, if you're talking about getting interviews with developers and stuff, that's a bit trickier. Now that I have the GameSpot name behind me, it makes it a lot easier. And actually what's happened recently is that I've been getting interviews because of my own name, because of stuff that I've done, like The Point or preview stuff, which is really cool. So like now I can like go to developers and be like, hey, look, we did this thing about The Witcher or No Man's Sky, XCOM. We could do something similar about your game. If you want, let us know. We'll do an interview and then you'll see if we like your game or not weeks later. But at the start, it's quite difficult because you essentially have to hope that people are willing to give you their time, even if they think that maybe you don't deserve it. And that's the kind of way the cookie crumbles when you don't have a big audience. That certainly was the case when I was independent. And then kind of when I started working at GameSpot and trying to get people in was kind of like acting professionally with them, being respectful, knowing a lot about their game is really important. If you can go up to a developer and know shit tons about their game and about stuff that they've done in the past, even if you just have to research it the night before, that'll go a long way. But I have a feeling your question was about portfolio, getting it in front of people. Find them out on Twitter, give it to them that way. Give it to them in the most easy ways possible. Emails, people just fucking delete or ignore. If you can get them on their like casual time, like Twitter, that's the way to do it. Bitchild asks the next question. How does age affect chances of breaking in? Is there such a thing as too old? Yes. There shouldn't, but the reality is that there is. And the main reason for this, I think, is a bias inherent in corporations to hire people younger because they tend to not be as expensive as people who are older. So younger people will take a lower wage. Younger people don't have families that need insurance. Younger people don't have... or have a bit more hustle probably and don't care as much about having a work-life balance. So if you are older, and I mean, I don't even know what old even means in the world of games coverage anymore. I'm actually older than Rich Gallup and most of the people who, like Jeff Gerstmann and most of the people who left GameSpot when I was watching them, or were pushed out of GameSpot when I was watching them, were like in their late 20s, and I'm 30 now. So like I'm actually probably on the old. I mean, people keep telling me I look like I'm 40 because I'm like gray hair and weather-beaten face. So I'm not like. I think the reality is, sadly, that if you are an old person or like even like a woman or a person of color, you generally have to make stuff that's better than what the white guys are doing because you need to justify yourself for whatever fucking reason. And I think that is the reality. And I think if you are in your 40s and up and you don't have experience, people are probably going to be less likely to take a chance on you. If you're 30s and up and you don't have experience, maybe kind of similar thing. If you're in your 20s, you're fine. But if you're in your 30s, like I don't want to beat around the bush. Like genuinely, I do think that causes problems for people, for hiring people, because they really need to justify you as a hire. And that's what managers. The worst thing about it for managers, and the worst thing about trying to get into a business, is that managers are doing it for reasons that aren't trying to get the best person necessarily. They're trying to take low risk. They're trying to hire people that hopefully will work out, because if they don't, it'll look badly on them. So managers generally are quite risk averse when it comes to that sort of stuff. So you really have to hand it to them on a platter. So if you are on the older side of the spectrum, or you're from like a sort of a minority group, then sadly I feel like the reality of working for a lot of these sites is that you need to like go beyond what the general people are doing, which fucking sucks. But yeah, maybe that's changed. I think that is changing because the audience for games is getting older, and some websites freak out about that, like, they're getting older, but like the younger people don't fucking spend any money, so they're useless to advertisers. So there is plenty of people who are your age and older playing games. So hypothetically, there should be somewhere to make money out of it, or to get work out of it. Perhaps that's not with the big game sites though. Livewire90 asks, could you talk about positions in games journalism industry that aren't seen on camera? Yes, this is great. So I originally wanted to work in the games press in a web development role. Or I wanted to work in web development and maybe hopefully get to work for a game site that way. Or even like a game publisher or whatever. So in stepping outside of games press completely, there are loads and loads and loads of jobs that aren't in journalism that are about games. There are PR jobs, there are marketing jobs, there are business jobs, there are development jobs of all shapes and sizes. There is jobs, liaising between the press and the games industry, which maybe might give you a little bit of a feel of both. There are ones that are strictly in the games industry, which may give you as much of access to games or as much a part of the games family to like make you, to like satiate you in a way that maybe games journalism is just too difficult to get into and maybe isn't worth. It's not worth all the effort. But then within games itself, obviously there is the video team, which consists of editors, producers, hosts. Hosts are in front of camera, editors behind, producers set up things. Honestly, most of the time people are all three. Like I'm three. I produce the lobby, I host the lobby, I don't edit it, but I like do the thumbnails for it and stuff like that. I edit other pieces, I host things that I don't edit, so it does all that. Then there's the editorial team, which is like news, which are just get the news out quick. Reviews, obviously playing games and reviewing them. A lot of those people are in front of camera as well. Previews, same kind of thing. And then outside of that, there are like social teams, so people managing Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all that stuff, Facebook. Excuse me. There are graphics people who make thumbnails and do graphics for parts of the site. There are the engineers who do front end and back end design on the website. So that includes everything from building parts of GameSpot to building specific, hubs for like our Game of the Year stuff, to building microsites, to working with the advertising teams, whatever. There is sales and marketing people and PMM, product management people, who liaise with advertising and build advertising around specific games, working with clients to do that. Then there are like normal medial jobs like HR and I'm trying to think what else about HR. Then there's like just normal corporate jobs that exist inside of that as well. Event management, for instance, with things like PAX and E3 and all those types of things. And then that kind of runs the gambit of it, at least for traditional sites. But there are loads of jobs. You're right, within games, and there are loads of ways to do it. And a lot of journalists go work in PR, and a lot of, there's designers that started off, working on graphics and then make game art, and there are programmers for websites that then go work for game sites. And there's a lot of malleability, and you see people who go from publishers to game sites. Like, we have our head of social used to work for EA, and then you see people doing the other way, like Greg Kasavin used to editor of GameSpot, now he runs Supergiant Games, right? So there's loads of ways to sort of get into the games industry, and then once you're in, there's actually a lot of passages throughout it which can help you maybe get to the role you want to do. Next question is from Braxton Hagen. My question to you is, at this point, would be, what would you be looking for most in bringing in new talent to an editorial team? I'm constantly writing, shooting, and editing projects, and would love some advice in terms of what aspects of content creation you believe is most important. So editorial team, no. Video team, I don't run a video team. I don't run anything. I don't manage a single person in GameSpot. But I'm in the video team. Editorial team is like a different kettle of fish. When we hire people, we hire them for editorial or video. There are two verticals within. I can't get too specific about GameSpot actually, but just generally in terms of game sites, there are editorial teams, there are video teams, there are advertising teams, and they all sort of do their own thing. And they all have their own. The way corporations work is that they all have their own budgets. They all have their own head counts and all that sort of stuff. So if you're hiring for the video team, I think the two most important things are speed and quality of work. If you can make a shitload of stuff in a short amount of time, super, super, super important, because a lot of the work in video teams is making stuff fast, high turnover, high turnaround. At E3, we do interviews, they get up on the site straight away. Interviews, get up on the site, go shoot something, record it, edit it, get it up on the site. Very, very fast. Second thing, quality. That's it. Seems obvious, sounds completely obvious, but if you can make stuff super fast, if you have a lot of work in a portfolio that tells a manager, they make a lot of stuff, even if you've spread it out over weeks, because managers are dumb, but if you can do that and you can say, I can edit this thing in this amount of time, or I did this video at this event and it only took this amount of time, or I only have 2 hours a week to work on stuff, but I somehow managed to get 3 videos out of it, as you can give the impression that you can work fast, then that's important. And second of all, have one thing that's fucking dope. Don't have 20 things that are medium quality. Have 10 things that are super fastly done and one fucking amazing thing. Because no one's going to look at your massive, massive, massive amount of video projects. But if you have a decent amount of videos that tick a certain amount of boxes for a manager, make them feel good about, they can do, she's able to do interviews and he's able to do previews and he's able to capture gameplay and all that stuff. And then you have one thing which is fucking amazing that's I want that on my website. Then that will get you an interview, hopefully. If they haven't already given the job away, which also happens as well. We'll get to that. That's one of the questions coming up, I think. Daniel Hetherington asks, can you describe your working week? What's a normal day look like? So this changes. So my working day 4 years ago is very different to what it was 2 years ago, is very different to what it is now. But for the sake of just saying what I do, I'll just give you what I do now. So the two big projects that I would work on, let's go run back a month when the point was still running, because that's probably a bit more evocative of my current day-to-day, because I'm actually going to be changing stuff soon enough. But Monday is meetings in the morning. So we have content meetings with our video teams and all that, which basically runs up to almost before lunchtime. So there's almost nothing we can fit in the morning. Afternoon, producing the lobby, which is finding out what the running order is, so what sections are going to go on the lobby that week. Thinking about titles, thinking about maybe the thumbnails for them, stuff like that. Seeing who's available to come on the lobby that week, so what editorial talent's there, if there's any guests we can get on, if there's any anyone who's swinging by the office, if we need to sort of base the running order based on who's there. Working with the production team to see who's there to produce the show, which has changed a lot now that Andy and Josh have left. So Mary and Eric Tay now run the show on the back end. So working with them to make sure they've got everything they need, that they've got the time and all that sort of stuff. And that's usually Monday, and then maybe putting together. There's a lot of writing scripts and capturing gameplay, which happens kind of in the in between moment. Tuesday is basically lobby day. So in the morning I'll work on bits and bobs, I record Alt F1 with the Giant Bomb podcast with Drew usually on a Tuesday morning. Then Tuesday afternoon is getting everyone into the studio, recording the lobby. So I prepare my notes for the lobby. There's the running order, and then I have a separate notes sheet. Collecting comments from YouTube or from Twitter followers and all that sort of stuff. And then once the show is done at 3, I make the thumbnails, titles, decks, which is the descriptions underneath them, and pass that stuff along to Eric, who puts it up on the website. We do separate thumbnails for the website. We do a promo image that goes up in the top slots on the site, and we also do a separate one which has text for YouTube. And all that stuff I do afterwards, and then go home. Tuesday, great. Wednesday to Thursday is a lot easier, and this depends on what else is happening. If there are, if we have a big preview that's on, I might be like hosting or editing or producing that thing. If it was the point, for instance, I would spend a day, half a day, usually like 3/4 of days writing. Like I usually write a bit on Monday, a bit on Tuesday, or a bit on Wednesday, maybe a bit on Thursday. And then that usually kind of spreads into Thursday as well, which is very much a editing videos that are going up on the site, maybe shooting. If it was the point, we'd go out and shoot stuff on a Thursday usually, and then throw it in. And then we usually have that finished by the Thursday night, so then the show went up on Friday. And generally for me, Friday is actually kind of empty. Like Fridays for me are maybe throwing together a feature. Like that's when I did the roll cage feature, or the grip feature, a couple of weeks back. Sometimes streams. So this is why we're setting up the Friday community stream, because I feel like I wasn't doing much and a couple of other people were kind of not really doing much. Mary had new releases on Friday, so she's actually pretty busy, but she's helping with that too. And yeah, that's kind of what a week looks like. But then you've got preparation for things like E3, for PAX, for GDC. Like this week was fucking all over the place because I did 3 extra podcasts. Then sometimes we do like hopping on Giant Bomb stuff as well. And then going out to appointments, which I don't do all that much. If I do, it's usually out of the country, but then sometimes we have appointments that we go to as well. And yeah, that's kind of what my working week is like. Other people have a lot more like working on video projects, working on specific things like this game, Division's out. Let's make these videos about the Division, and then you capture the gameplay and write the thing and then edit it and then put it on the website and then do another one. But yeah, that's kind of what a general working day or week is like. Black Ember 32X asked, do you think that having just a lot of written work to how to potential employers, it must be show, is going to be enough, or is it today and age imperative to have video making skills, being at ease in front of the camera, stuff like that? Yes, right. Do not go anywhere looking for a writing job with just writing stuff. Don't. If those days aren't over, there are so little jobs that you can do that in that it's basically pointless. Have video presenting skills, most importantly, and if you can edit together something easily. There's this thing, a couple of years ago, there was this thing where writers used to not be able to like edit images and photographs and stuff like that. And that day is gone. If you are a writer, now you can use Photoshop, and that's the reality of it. And I really think that if you're someone who's talking about games, you know how to edit something a little bit. Editing's not that hard. It really isn't. You can pick up Premiere or Final Cut if you want. You can pick up easier, cheaper ones as well. I mean, the Adobe Cloud is so cheap now that you can basically just get on that monthly thing and have all those projects, have all those pieces of software there, where it used to be you'd have to spend like 600 quid on them. You don't. It's like $30 a month or something like that, which is not cheap, but it's like, if you want to do this for work, it's not so bad. But video editing is not that hard. It's mostly trying to get cameras that are good enough and trying to get microphones that are good enough and stuff like that, which takes money. But there's nothing stopping you from being able to edit the same videos that most people edit, just not to the same visual quality, but in terms of like editing skills and learning how to edit stuff, you can do it with fucking anything. You can do it with an iPhone camera. It's fine. So yes, learn how to do that. I think those days are long gone. I think there will always be some dedicated writers within this industry, but there's always going to be more people who want to write than people who can get jobs doing it. So I would not rest your hat on that. I'd do some sort of video stuff if you can. Sorry, a lot of talking. My mom wants to Skype. Oh, and Joe Slack says hey. All right. Let's keep going. Snarky Starkey says, you mentioned networking. I've been making it a point to go to more conventions, both to build my own audience as well as try and network with the personalities I enjoy at these events. I'm fortunate enough to have a job that affords me these opportunities, but for others who might only be able to make one show a year, what do you think are the best ones to attend to get your name out there? I honestly don't think you need to go to events, to be completely honest. There is nothing you can't do on Twitter. I was in Ireland posting on GameSpot, and then I had the second most viewed and subscribed blog on GameSpot. The only other person who had a higher one than me was Jeff Gersman, and that included all the staff. and I was posting stuff in my bedroom in the southeast of Ireland, and I'd never been to a games convention. So, like, that's an extreme example, but I really don't think, like, networking to me is Twitter. Like, Twitter is where fucking every single professional who works in the games industry is. Twitchers and YouTubers are less so there. Like, you'll see a Twitch streamer who's got like millions of people who, or like people, 10,000 people who watch something for them. They might necessarily have that big a Twitter follower and that actually happens a lot more with YouTubers. We have like 1 million subscribers on YouTubers, and then they have like, 20,000 followers on Twitter. But for people who work in the industry, that's bread and butter. That is the number one networking tool, and that is how you do it. Going to those events is great for loads of reasons. For seeing games, for meeting developers, I think, more than anything else. From meeting indie developers, from meeting big developers. And yeah, for, rubbing shoulders with people who are in the industry. But the people who you're going to be rubbing shoulders with there aren't really the people who are going to be able to get you jobs. Like, if I meet you in an industry, I can't get you a job. I'm not a manager. I don't run anything at GameSpot. I run my stuff. I run the lobby and I run the point, but I'm not in charge of who they hire. I'm not in charge of their video direction. I have nothing to do with that. That's not what I'm employed for. So, like, the people who you want to get in contact with if you want to break into the industry aren't really the people who are at those events. If you want to build your own audience, yeah, maybe there's some of that, but like, how many people are you going to go up to and talk at an event and say, hey, go check out my YouTube channel? I mean, I think if you're going to something like PAX and you know people who are doing panels, that's a good way of getting out in front of people. But the people who want to go to these, like, it's not useful for coverage, because the people who want to go to these events go to these events. The people who don't watch videos about them on the internet generally. That's why PAX stuff never really does much traffic. And then in terms of like meeting people for work, I don't necessarily think that's like the best place to go do it. I think everyone should go to PAX East or PAX Prime because they're fucking brilliant. But apart from that, I wouldn't bother. GDC is actually a really good one if you want to meet developers. It's just as San Francisco is expensive, and E3 is basically useless unless you're trying to sell a game. So it's hard to get into. It's mostly business people, and it's less and less relevant in terms of actual games coverage as well. But yeah, when I say networking, I mean internet. I mean, you know what the best way to network is? Make a fucking amazing video. Like, make an unbelievable video that people share. Because people who work in the industry want to pick up somebody who's really good at doing stuff. And if you make something that's amazing, don't worry about the views. If you make something that's really cool and only like 500 people see it on your YouTube channel, but it's amazing, then that works better than anything else. People will remember you, they'll follow you on Twitter, and then you're inside. So I wouldn't worry about going to events all that much. Colton, get a job and get someone else to pay you to go to events. Colton Daniel asks, should I focus on one thing with video games to land the job I want? When applying for a job, how do I know that I have what it takes? Mentally, I know I do, but how do I come across without that degree? Okay, this was part of a bigger conversation. Like I said, you don't need a degree, but managers are risk-averse people, so they want people with degrees so they can say, oh, okay, I didn't get some bum off the street. Like, that's the way their minds work. You don't need a degree. There are people who are in management positions at these companies who literally never went to college. It's like, so you don't need to do this. But if you want to give yourself the best chance with risk-averse hiring managers, it's good to have some sort of degree. You don't need a journalism degree. It's good to have some sort if you don't. If you don't, then we're getting into the same thing I said earlier, which is that you really need to make yourself the most employable person in the world. Having really good work helps. You can be self-taught. I'm self-taught. I did graphic design in college, but like I was already a web developer and a graphic designer for like 3 years before I even went to college. So like a lot of people, probably most people who are in this industry are self-taught. I'm self-taught for editing, writing, making thumbnails, meeting people. There's no school of thought for doing that. Journalists, I think, are better off maybe having some sort of education behind them because there's a lot of things to learn in that. But I don't necessarily think a lot of what you learn in film school gets carried over, except for like lighting and using cameras, like absolutely. And the problem with that is that you won't know how to do that unless you're in one of these jobs because you won't have access to those cameras. So you just fudge it. Like, no, I remember getting interviewed and having questions asked of me about, lighting and cameras and aperture and all that stuff. It's nothing you can't just Google. So Like, be confident and have a good portfolio, and that's what matters most. Nick Flegg asks, I'm one of the ones who didn't make it. I was and still am a self-employed video producer, so it kind of still worked out for me in the end. What disheartened me the most was my failure to break in. About my failure to break in was how often those prestigious video producer jobs went to people already in the industry. People sidestepping from one game site to another. This is a massive problem. I was stepped over 3 times, and twice were for people who were already in the industry. And most of those people end up not being in the industry much longer, or not being in the industry for very long in the end, which is sad. This goes back to managers. Managers are risk averse. They also don't know people. The people who know people on game sites are the people who are out interviewing people and talking to other journalists and doing that stuff. The people who are hiring generally are too worried, they're too busy trying to manage all the people they have to really have eyes on people outside of your industry. So, like, this is why companies have outreach programs where, like, you can get $500 if you refer a friend to this position, because managers don't have visibility on people out in the industry. So what happens, and it's not, there is this sort of, there's this like thing that people blame it on. Either people being like, nihilistic or having like prejudices about, that we see the same people in every other jobs. And there is most certainly like an element of that, definitely, like sorting out your friends and only hiring white people because you only know white people. But the other thing that exists very much in this is that people just pluck people from where they used to work because they don't know anyone. And that's another problem if you're trying to break in. So what you have to do, sadly, again, I'm beating the same drum, is make yourself the most employable person. Make the decision easy for them. Have a portfolio that's better than the other person. If you're coming in cheap as well, it helps. The other problem about hiring somebody from a different game site is that they're going to want that wages or higher. So if you can produce a piece of work that's to that level or close to that level, and you're only breaking in and you're young and you want that gig, then maybe they'll pick you over them for that reason. But that's the way managers think about this stuff. And that's why you see most hires for every site have worked at a different site, especially in a place like San Francisco, where IGN is down the road from GameSpot, 1UP used to be here, PC Gamer's up the road, Games Radar's down south. They're all there, and everyone knows each other, and it's kind of easier to get them than it is to like hire some kid from Cincinnati, you know what I mean, who you don't know and never seen any of their work. It's like bucketing raining right now. I'm back in Ireland. Can you even see that? Nah, it doesn't come up. I'll show you outside. Here. I don't think I've ever... Look at it. Look at this. Look at that rain. Dirt. Not cool. Camera's going to fall over now. Yeah, so... That does suck. I'm totally with you, Nick. Like, I experienced a similar thing. And, like, once I'm in now, it wouldn't be that hard to go to another website as opposed to before when nobody knew who I was. So, yeah, I think that is a massive problem. And sadly, the only way to do it is to make the decision so easy for managers and hiring people by just being better than everyone. And it sucks that you have to do it, but that's the sort of harsh reality of it. OMG Swift asks, in my experience, games journalism, at least in the UK, is more about who you know and not what you know. Quality of your work is not as important as making contacts, though multiple skills, writing, video, audio, hosting experience is also pretty much essential. There is definitely a truth to that. It sort of comes in from the last question. But again, I also know plenty of people who broke in through this, through that sort of that wall or glass ceiling or whatever, but not glass ceiling, it's the wrong metaphor, broke through that wall by having work that's good enough. And the problem is, if you're trying to break in and you're indistinguishable from everyone else, but they know the other person, then the other person's going to get the job. So it's the same sort of thing. Like, it is important to know people, but like, I made a fucking point when I moved to London to get the to try and get the GameSpot gig, to not fraternize with people and not network in that way. Like, I didn't give a shit about that. So when I say networking, I really mean Twitter. I don't mean befriend people who work in PR or work in games journalism. I actually vilified them. I thought as everyone who was in the games industry as sycophantic, lazy fuckers whose jobs I was going to eat up. Like, that's the way I thought about them. This was around the time that, like, handouts were happening and all this shit, and all the independent sites were trying to like go to events so they could get freebies, and all the, you know, independent journalists were like sucking up to the people who had the jobs, and I wanted fucking none of it. And this informs the way that I the way I keep saying, make something that makes it impossible for them not to hire you, because that's the only thing I wanted to do. I didn't want to get a job by sucking up to someone. I didn't want to get a job because I knew the right person. I wanted to get a job because I was so much fucking better than everyone else that there was no question I was going to get the job. So I got the job in GameSpot, and I wasn't, they didn't interview anyone else. And that's the way I wanted it to go down. And like, I had it before, and I'd failed a bunch of times at GameSpot, and it sucked, but at least it was like, okay, I know I can improve and do a better job of it. So like, there are people who get into the games press who did it via that way, but those people rise to the level of their incompetence. The people who get into the industry that way are still in that fucking job, or they've gone and worked in PR. The people who got in based on their own merit are still doing that. So I wouldn't worry too much about the people you know or the people you don't. It's also, it's a dangerous, what's the word? Crutch, which I see a lot of people fall by, which is that, fuck, the only reason I'm not getting into this industry is because everyone else knows each other. If you're good enough, you might not get in, but if you blame it on the fact that everyone else knows each other and it's this like cabal of people, then you're never going to get in. You need to get really good, make yourself the most employable person, which sucks, but you need to do that to try and break in. It isn't impossible. It's the way I got in. Now it seems like it's, of course it happened because I'm, you know, I have this like amount of work that, you know, looks good and all that stuff. But like 5 years ago, I was nobody, and I've been trying to get in for years, 3 or 4 years. And I didn't do it by knowing anyone. And the people who do, fuck them. Like, they're the people who no one cares about anyway. So, you know, they're the people who are still in this job, writing about games or doing videos about games, who still have imposter syndrome and still don't have like any backing behind them. All they have is the people, their connections, and that's ultimately, you know, those things go away. So don't worry about it. Just make good work. And if your work is good enough to get into the industry, amazing. And if it's not, then there are other ways of doing this as well that you can try to. It's just harder than others. And last question, Dimsan5, how did you motivate yourself to start? My biggest problem is starting things. I can never nail down what I want to do. This is really hard now, I think, and this echoes a lot of people's questions, because there's so much games coverage out there. I mean, when I was getting in, one of the best things that was happening was that nobody really knew what to do with video. They were kind of like doing television shit, or just capturing gameplay and putting that up, or, you know, doing interviews like, hey, tell me about your game. Oh, that's great. Does it have multiplayer? When is it out? What platform? You know, so it was really easy to do something new because everyone was so terrible. Like video game video, there was like 2 or 3 people who were doing interesting things. GameSpot was doing some really interesting stuff with live. One Up Show was really cool, but like most of it was awful. So it wasn't that hard to do it. The difference now is that it's in all shapes and sizes. You've got stuff like, you know, Total Biscuit putting up videos that are 50 minutes long of him like ranting rather eloquently about something, and then you have Super Bunny Hop, which is like all like written stuff, and then you've got Jim Sterling doing his stand-up bits, and then you've got like, you know, the stuff that we did with The Witcher, which is like more highly produced, and then you've got Twitch stuff, which is just right off the cuff and goes on for 5 hours, and it's not really talking about, it's just playing the game. So there's way more ways in which games coverage has expanded, and that's the reason why it's expanded, is because people stopped doing it in the same bloody format everyone else was doing it in. But there's more. So don't look towards games. If it looks like everyone's doing stuff, all the bases are covered, it's only because you're looking at games too much. Get away from games. Watch sports coverage, watch documentaries, watch films even, like watch independent movies, watch short form movies. There are so many different ways you can tell a story that don't involve just talking into a camera. Like, I even think about, like, all my stuff's the same. The point is this, except we're not in my room, we're out in Rainland, or like this is just like the same as anyone with a bloody, you know, normal webcam, except it's like, hey, what's up, welcome to my channel, except it looks like slightly different. So even I'm stuck in doing the same thing every time. Once, when you're creating something and you want like your, what is it, like your imagination gets sparked and you grab onto an idea and suddenly you're getting pulled along, it's always a new thing. It's always some way of doing something that either you've never done or no one's ever done. So don't try and copycat people, because you'll never make a name for yourself. Or if you do, it'll just take so much work, because you'll have to build a community based on nothing new, which is very, very difficult. But if you do something new, people like that. People like something new. And you might like it because you have a sense of ownership over it and it'll spark your interest. So, I mean, it's really hard to start stuff. A lot of it has to do with your own mentality. Like, I've OCD and I have all these weird things, so I need to like tidy the house before I do anything in the morning. A lot of it has to do with how you understanding what drives you, which I think is something that only comes with age, because life is so complicated and hard and weird. Like, I feel like I'm only really getting to know what I like doing now when I'm 30, and it's difficult. But I mean, the ultimate thing of all these questions is, if you're not enjoying doing this stuff, then don't do it, or change what you're doing. Don't try and copy people. Don't worry about networking too much. Make something that's really good. And if you're not making stuff that's good, then the thing you're doing probably isn't for you. Do something else. Look at other lines of work within games coverage or in the wider gaming world. There's loads of ways to earn money that can facilitate working in games. Or there's loads of ways of earning money that give you the time to play games outside of the media, just playing games, having fun. Something that I haven't. Well, sorry, I have fun playing games, but like playing games without thinking about work the whole time. There's a lot to be said for it. This work is incredible, and I'm very, very fortunate. And I feel lucky on a daily basis when I get to do this. But there's a lot to be said for having a job that, you know, makes you happy in other ways, and then you've got time to play video games. So yeah, I hope this helps. There was about a dozen questions there I answered. I don't know how long this thing's running for, but I guess I'm going to wrap it up because I can barely... I'm doing a Matt Lees and turning into Batman with my voice. Thank you so much for all these questions. I hope this helps. I hope it's not too pontificatey. I get very passionate when I talk about this thing because I know exactly the feeling that you guys are in, because I was in it for years and years. I'm now approaching the time where I've actually been in the industry longer than I was trying to break in. It's like coming up. It's this summer, which makes me feel very, very strange. So if there's one thing I can help try and do, it's maybe give people advice to sidestep some of the sort of potholes that I landed in, and wish you all the best of luck. I'd like to do one of these videos again if there is a thirst for it. So if you have any more comments or questions or whatever, please put them in the comments. Yeah, and best of luck. I hope this has been useful. Again, I'm sorry if this comes across as pontificating or I don't have all the fucking answers. All I can tell you, give you is my feedback based on the experiences that I've had. And I think my story within games is not very atypical, in that I tried to get in for so long, didn't, then got in, and I've actually been relatively successful in the short amount of years that I've been here. So I think my experiences have covered a lot of what's happened. And I also don't mind sort of showing behind the curtain. So hopefully it's a little bit useful. All right, I'm ranting now. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Thanks for subscribing and watching. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, I was going to go for a run, but I don't think I will now. But I will be back with another video sometime in the next couple. I'm going to record a bunch of videos today. Today's Sunday, and put them up about actual games as well. So it won't just be me ranting in front of camera for the next couple of months on this channel. Thank you again, and goodbye.